Imagine, like, spending 50 years of your life mastering the most complex, demanding intellectual game in human history.
Right. Just sacrificing absolutely everything for this one pursuit.
Exactly. You build this absolute soaring tower of knowledge. You finally reach the pinnacle, like the absolute peak of your field. And your grand prize is this terrifying realization that you've just been staring at a beautifully painted brick wall the entire time.
It's such a wild concept. I mean, we are so conditioned to view learning as this um, purely cumulative thing, you know?
Yeah.
We just assume that if we gather enough data, read enough books, synthesize enough frameworks, the universe will eventually just snap into a perfect, understandable grid.
Right, like we're solving a puzzle.
Yeah, but we rarely consider the possibility that the grid itself might eventually become a cage.
Welcome to the deep dive. We have a profoundly fascinating stack of source material today. We are looking at the last glass bead, which is this fragmentary, posthumously discovered novel by the Nobel Prize-winning author Hermann Hesse.
It's a really incredible piece of work.
It really is, and we have a very specific mission for this dive. Like, if you are listening to this right now, you are likely someone who is driven to acquire knowledge. You want to synthesize information, optimize your mental models, and, connect the dots in your career and your life.
Which is a great thing, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. But today, we're going to look at why the ultimate aha moment in your intellectual journey might not be some brilliant new connection. It might actually be the profoundly disorienting realization that you need to just put your tools down entirely.
We're basically exploring the ultimate paradox of learning here. Like, what happens when you master a system of thought so completely that your very expertise becomes the barrier?
The thing preventing you from actually experiencing the physical world.
Exactly.
So to really grasp the mechanics of this paradox, we have to look at the setting of Hesse's story. The narrative takes place in this fictional province called Castalia. Imagine a utopian society dedicated 100% to the life of the mind. They have stripped away all the politics, all the economic struggles, all the messy practicalities.
All the real world stuff.
Yeah, leaving only pure intellectual and spiritual cultivation. And the absolute center of gravity in Castalia is the Glass Bead Game.
And the game is notoriously difficult to conceptualize because you don't play it on a physical board with pieces.
Right, there's no dice or anything.
No.
Yeah.
It is essentially the ultimate cognitive practice of finding these deep structural kinships between seemingly incompatible fields of human knowledge.
Give us an example of that, because it's pretty abstract.
Well, to play the game at a high level means sitting down and demonstrating the underlying mathematical and philosophical grammar connecting, say, the structural engineering of a medieval monastery, Kepler's laws of planetary motion, and, I don't know, the counterpoint in one of Bach's fugues.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like the ultimate dopamine hit for anyone who loves learning.
Oh, for sure.
Imagine a chessboard where the pieces are entire academic disciplines. And moving a knight is literally the act of translating a theorem in quantum physics into a musical chord progression. You are quite literally finding the hidden grammar of the universe.
And you would naturally assume that if finding that hidden grammar is the peak of human achievement, the person at the very top of that hierarchy is the most fulfilled human being on Earth.
But they're not.
No. When we look at the system's greatest champion, his reality just shatters that assumption entirely.
Yeah, so let's talk about the protagonist. His name is Silvius. He's 73 years old, and he has spent 50 years playing this game. He is a universally celebrated master.
A living legend in Castalia.
Right. And then, at the absolute height of his powers, he simply stops. He leaves Castalia forever.
And he hasn't failed the game, right? That's the crazy
Well,
part.
he isn't suffering from cognitive decline or burnout or anything. The text actually notes that he achieved and this is a quote, completion so total that it became indistinguishable from emptiness.
That phrase is just chilling. Indistinguishable from emptiness.
It really is. And the crisis that triggers his departure is incredibly specific. It perfectly illustrates the trap of over-intellectualization.
Yeah, tell them about the autumn meditation.
Okay, so Silvius is tasked with leading this autumn meditation for the other elite scholars. And the theme he's assigned is the concept of a threshold.
A very Castalian topic.
Very. And he approaches this the way a master would, you know. He maps the concept of a threshold through the romantic poetry of John Keats, through the structuralist theory of linguistics, through the bridge between musical keys and Bach, and through the unresolved sevenths in Beethoven's late quartets.
He builds this massive, shining, flawless web of brilliant references.
Exactly. But the psychological mechanism of what happens next is crucial. On the third day of preparing this meditation, Silvius experiences this terrifying vertigo.
Because he realizes he isn't actually thinking about a threshold at all.
Right. He is only thinking about a threshold.
Yes. Every connection he makes just leads to another abstraction. Every symbol refers only to its own history of academic references.
He's trapped.
He's completely trapped in a closed cognitive loop of interpretation.
Because nowhere in this massive intellectual web is the actual physical feeling of standing at a literal doorway.
Exactly.
He has completely lost that suspension of breath. He can't access the feeling in the soles of his feet that tells him something is ending and something else hasn't quite begun.
It's like the brain gets so addicted to building the map of reality that it entirely forgets the actual ground it's standing on.
Human cognition relies on building these maps, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, we have to do it.
We do. We create systems, categories, frameworks to compress the infinite complexity of the real world into something our brains can actually process and manipulate.
Otherwise, we'd just be overwhelmed.
Right. But Hesse is pointing out a fatal flaw in a highly systematic practice here. If you spend decades refining a map, making it more and more magnificent and detailed, the map eventually becomes the territory.
The system becomes the thing it was originally built to merely gesture toward. It's the exact mechanism of analyzing a joke.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Like, if you dissect the mechanics of a joke thoroughly enough, you can map the exact chronological blueprint of why the setup and punchline work perfectly together. You achieve total structural understanding.
But in the process, the joke completely stops being funny.
You've literally murdered the laugh to understand its anatomy.
Yeah. And Silvius develops a private term for this phenomenon in the text. He calls it the locked bead.
The locked bead. And he uses this brilliant visual metaphor to explain it, right?
He does. He says, imagine a plain glass window in a room. It lets in the sunlight, gives you a clear view of the trees and the sky outside.
A normal window.
Right. Now, an immensely skilled painter comes along and paints a mural directly onto the glass of the window, perfectly replicating the view outside. The painted trees, the painted sky, the painted light.
Wow.
It is luminous, accurate, and a testament to the painter's unparalleled mastery.
A perfect simulation. But, and here's the catch, you cannot put your hand through a painting and feel the breeze.
You can't.
The symbol has been so beautifully elaborated over decades of practice that it no longer opens onto the physical world. It only points back at the painter's immense skill. It only points back at the game itself.
And because the map has totally replaced the territory, Silvius realizes the only way to break the loop is to do the unthinkable. He has to exit the system entirely.
So he just leaves.
He packs a single bag, abandons all his academic commentary, and moves to a small, yellow house in a tiny village in the Swabian Hills.
To see what's actually left.
Right. He wants to find out what actually remains of the world when the compulsion to, connect the dots finally stops.
But he immediately encounters the friction of the real world. Like, it's not a smooth transition.
Oh, not at all.
He decides to start a garden and keep bees. But he's a Castalian scholar, so his brain is hardwired to approach the physical dirt like an intellectual problem to be solved with data.
He literally plants his garden by the calendar.
Which is so funny to me. He reads the date, observes the warm spring light, calculates the optimal planting window, and puts his seeds in the ground. And inevitably, a late frost comes and kills his entire crop.
Because the soil operates on physics, not theory.
Yeah.
The soil is more conservative than the sunlight. It holds the deep winter cold much longer than the air does.
Right. And then a local village woman named Maria has to teach Silvius a profound lesson about the limits of his frameworks.
She explains that he cannot know about spring in the abstract.
No.
He must learn the specific, localized timing of this specific ground. He has to learn the microclimate of this exact corner of the yard.
And that kind of localized reality just cannot be extracted from a statistical model or a book.
It requires a fundamental shift in cognition.
Yeah.
Moving from abstract modeling to sustained patient observation.
Now, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Isn't this just like a romanticization of anti-intellectualism? Is Hesse really arguing that all our scientific progress, our meteorology, our agricultural science, is fundamentally useless compared to the intuition of a local peasant? That feels like a dangerous rejection of human progress.
I get why you'd say that, but it is a vital distinction to make. Hesse isn't arguing for the abandonment of the intellect at all.
Okay.
He's highlighting the necessity of transcending abstraction when you're dealing with localized reality. Silvius notes the massive difference between understanding the garden, which implies, solving it, applying abstract knowledge to extract an output, and being useful to the garden.
Oh, being useful.
Yeah. Being useful requires abandoning your preconceived agenda and attending to the physical reality directly in front of you.
Okay, that makes sense. And the text highlights this physical reality beautifully in the scene where Silvius buys his first cookbook.
I love this scene.
It's so good. He hasn't cooked a meal for himself in 30 years because Castalia provided absolutely everything. So he buys this basic domestic cookbook, and he reads a recipe instruction that tells him to heat the oil until it shimmers.
And that phrase completely paralyzes him.
Totally paralyzes him, because the word shimmer cannot be intellectualized.
Exactly. That shimmer isn't the theory. It is a physical reality that exists only in the hands, in the visual timing, and in the specific sound that the hot pan makes.
It's the stark difference between reading a comprehensive manual on the fluid dynamics of swimming and actually jumping into the pool and getting wet.
Right. Your theoretical knowledge of buoyancy won't keep you from swallowing water on your first lap.
Which brings us to Silvius's friend in the village, this doctor named Otto.
Right, Otto.
Otto has spent 40 years treating the same small rural community. He reads Chekhov in his spare time, but he makes zero effort to synthesize his reading with his medical practice.
None at all.
When Silvius attempts to explain the grand unifying theory of the Glass Bead Game, the attempt to prove that everything in the universe is fundamentally related, Otto is deeply unimpressed.
He's just like, yeah, so what?
Yeah. He tells Silvius that anyone who has paid attention to life for more than a few years already knows everything is related. The actual question is what you are supposed to do once you know it.
Which cuts right to the bone of the intellectual pursuit. Like, what is the practical utility of omniscience?
Well, for Otto, the utility is entirely localized and physical. Shortly before Otto dies at the age of 80, he confesses to Silvius that the most important intervention of his entire medical career wasn't his brilliant diagnostic deductions or his complex treatment plans.
It was simply the act of sitting with.
Just sitting with.
It was the physical practice of being present in a room with a patient experiencing profound difficulty without necessarily having the tools to fix it.
The mechanics of that sitting with represent the ultimate un-Castalian act. Otto wasn't looking at the patient as a puzzle to be solved.
He lowered the clipboard.
He lowered the clipboard. He stopped analyzing the charts and started observing the patient's breathing, their skin tone, the tension in the room. He abandoned the attempt to synthesize and simply offered his presence.
And Hesse connects this directly to a concept from art and musicology called Spätstil, or League style.
Oh, right.
We see this in the final string quartets of Beethoven, or the late, heavily textured paintings of Titian or Rembrandt.
It's like the phenomenon where a great filmmaker's later movies suddenly strip away all the flashy camera moves and complex editing they used in their 20s.
Yes. Late style often looks visually or acoustically minimal, almost unadorned, but it is actually heavily saturated with unexpressed experience.
It's stripped down, but heavy.
Exactly. This physical shift happens when a master finally burns off the psychological need to perform their mastery.
They no longer care about demonstrating their technical skill to an audience.
Right. The stark simplicity you hear in those late Beethoven quartets isn't a lack of ability. It is the pure, distilled residue of a lifetime of grueling, complex work.
So Silvius, abandoning his grand theories to watch the frost on his garden, is him entering his own late style.
Precisely.
Now, a grandmaster retreating to a garden to tend bees and achieve late style is a beautiful, personal, spiritual journey. But what are the implications for the massive institution he leaves behind?
That's the real problem.
Yeah, because Silvius doesn't just vanish into the hills. He writes a letter to Lorenz, the Magister Ludi, the supreme leader of Castalia.
And Lawrence is forced into this profound crisis of leadership. Silvius writes to him, explaining that the game is merely a path, and he has simply reached the destination.
The path is no longer necessary once you arrive.
Lorenz struggles immensely to process this because he's reminded of another old master, a man named Vetus.
Oh, Vetus! This story is wild.
Years prior, Vetus was participating in a highly anticipated high-level demonstration of the game.
The whole assembly is watching.
Everyone is watching. And instead of making a brilliant crowd-pleasing connection, Vetus just sat at the table in complete agonizing silence for 10 minutes.
10 whole minutes.
And then he finally looked up at the assembly and said, "I believe we have already played this. I wonder if we might simply be in it."
Wow.
Vetus had reached the exact same cognitive threshold as Silvius. He was looking at the view from the other side of the painted glass.
And Lorenz, reading Silvius's letter, finally recognizes this phenomenon. He even makes the journey to the Yellow House to visit Silvius in person to verify it.
And the outcome of that visit is fascinating because Lorenz realizes Silvius has found the ultimate truth. But Lorenz is the magister. He is the manager of the institution.
He can't just walk out.
He cannot walk through the window himself. He is too deeply tied to the structural survival of Castalia.
But he decides he can at least point to the window for the others.
Right.
So he subtly alters the advanced curriculum, introducing a period of unstructured attention. No assigned themes, no connection making, just existing in the world.
Okay, I have to challenge Lorenz's move here again.
Does institutionalizing unstructured attention instantly kill the magic of it? I mean, it feels suspiciously like corporate management taking something profound, like enlightenment or mindfulness, and sanitizing it into a mandatory HR training module. You can't put a syllabus on spiritual awakening.
I know. It is very easy to view Lorenz cynically through a modern lens. But looking closely at the mechanisms of teaching, Lorenz is actually displaying a staggering amount of humility here.
Really? How so?
He knows exactly what his role is. He's a manager, not a visionary. He recognizes that the massive institutional scaffolding he has spent 30 years maintaining will eventually block the sunlight for the true transcendent masters like Silvius.
Okay, but he still keeps the scaffolding.
Because Lorenz also deeply understands the psychology of learning. He knows that the young students absolutely need that rigid scaffolding to climb up in the first place. You cannot simply instruct a 20-year-old novice to sit with the universe if they haven't yet developed the brutal cognitive discipline of attention.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So the paradox is that you need a highly rigid, structured system to eventually learn how to be formless.
Yes.
You cannot just skip to late style. You have to earn the simplicity through decades of complexity.
Exactly. Lorenz is protecting the integrity of the path, even while openly acknowledging that the path is not the final destination.
Right. And to really examine the necessity of that scaffolding, the text introduces us to the impact of Lorenz's curriculum change on the next generation. We meet Anna.
Anna is such a great character.
She really is. She's a brilliant 24-year-old student rising through the ranks of Castalia, and she is deeply entrenched in what Silvius's notes call the hunger phase.
And the hunger phase is a literal neurochemical reality in the early stages of deep learning.
We've all been there.
It is that intoxicating period where your brain is undergoing rapid synaptic pruning and building new pathways. Every new piece of information triggers a dopamine hit of pattern recognition.
Everything connects.
Everything connects. And your brain has an inexhaustible, ravenous appetite for synthesizing the world.
So Anna is wandering through the restricted archives, and she discovers Silvius's final, fragmented manuscript. She reads the entire document, and she cries.
But she doesn't cry at the grand philosophical deconstructions of the game.
No. She cries at a tiny, hyper-specific passage where Silvius writes about his former partner, Elena. Elena was a woman who briefly brought ordinary, messy, domestic love into Silvius's sterile academic life before she eventually left him because Castalia was just too suffocating. Silvius refers to Elena in the text as the draft from the open window.
And Anna cries because, unlike Silvius, she grew up outside of Castalia. She understands ordinary loss. She realizes that Silvius's manuscript isn't an academic puzzle to be analyzed. It is a human testimony.
And this realization completely alters her cognitive approach to her studies. She stops looking at the game as a vehicle for finding ultimate truth and starts treating it purely as a meditation practice to build her own capacity for discipline. And this is where the mechanism of the story directly targets you, the listener.
Yes, listen closely to this part.
If you are currently deep in the hunger phase or the discipline phase of your career, like if you are actively building your mental models, learning the ropes of your industry, and eagerly connecting the dots, this story is not giving you permission to drop everything, abandon your ambitions, and move to a yellow house to keep bees.
The timeline of Anna's life proves this perfectly. She reads the manuscript, she understands the ultimate emptiness of the game, but she doesn't pack her bags.
No, she stays.
She stays in Castalia for 34 more years.
She stays because she deeply understands the structural metaphor Silvius leaves behind in one of his final poems. He writes about the bee describing summer to an empty jar.
We really have to unpack the mechanics of that metaphor.
Let's do it.
The empty jar represents the rigid, beautiful, but ultimately closed systems we build. Our careers, our academic pursuits, our intellectual models.
And the summer.
The summer is the messy, infinite, raw experience of actual life. We spend decades trying to shove the sprawling reality of summer into the rigid confines of the jar.
And Anna realizes that being the bee, buzzing endlessly inside that jar, is a biologically necessary phase of human development.
You have to be the bee for a long time.
You must build the map before you have earned the psychological right to burn the map.
Because Silvius could never have reached his final state of enlightenment without the game?
Right. He refers to his ultimate realization as the October transparency. It's that singular moment in the garden where the physical world suddenly becomes radiant and entirely sufficient on its own without requiring his brain to interpret it.
He could not have accessed that profound silence without the 50 years of intense, grueling, disciplined attention that the Glass Bead Game forced upon him.
The game didn't fail him.
Not at all. The extreme rigidity of the game actually carved out the necessary cognitive capacity within his brain to eventually hold that immense silence.
It trained his attention so sharply, like a laser, that he could finally look at an object without immediately turning it into a symbol for something else.
Which brings us to the very end of Silvius's journey.
He is 75 years old. He is sitting in his quiet kitchen on a freezing winter morning, and he spends a long time looking at a cheap, blue glazed cup sitting on his windowsill.
And the way he interacts with that cup is the culmination of his entire life's work.
He does absolutely nothing with it. He doesn't connect the glaze to the history of Swabian ceramics. He doesn't relate the curve of the handle to the physics of light refraction. He doesn't tie the act of drinking to Zen philosophy.
The cup doesn't need to be a symbol for the universe.
It is just a cup.
Yeah.
And sitting in the morning light, it is radiant. It is exactly enough, just as it is. He finally stops playing the world and allows the world to simply be.
It is a stunning, quiet arrival, and it leaves us with a rather wild implication to consider.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
We are currently entering an era where artificial intelligence can instantly connect the dots across every known discipline faster and more comprehensively than any human brain ever could. AI is essentially playing the ultimate glass bead game right now.
Which is terrifying for a lot of people.
Right. We often view this as a threat to our intellectual identity. But perhaps it isn't making us obsolete. Perhaps, by outsourcing the exhausting work of building the map, we are finally being freed to walk away from the game board, step outside the room, and actually feel the breeze on our faces.
What a profound way to look at the future. To let the towering structures we've built just stand there while we sit on the grass and experience the summer.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the last glass bead. We hope you take a moment to step away from your own blueprints today and find your own blue cup in the morning light.